good to go.
Recording
All right.
stories about teasing dogs. And
I have an
training
extra
them poorly.
curly hair on my notebook, and I don't know where. It's my beard. It's my beard. I'm playing with my beard. That's what's
When you
happening.
started it with I thought you were going to say Island Boy. I was like, oh, fuck, Pat. Don't
Island
you
Boy.
Don't you dare.
Oh, man,
Don't
those
you
kids.
dare.
What
Stop,
the hell?
stop right now. We're not even giving them any oxygen. No.
Yeah, that's a good point.
That's funny, though.
We're manifesting
and it is
into the
not even
universe.
catchy. Yeah, this is the worst
Well, I
thing
think it's a
about
real
it.
catchy song
No,
because it gets caught in my head.
Yeah,
I haven't
no.
heard the real version, just these two fucking Muppets.
That's
on
it.
That's it.
That's
Live?
them.
That's them?
That's them.
Oh,
That's
shit.
it. Some TikTok bullshit.
Yeah. TikTok, SoundCloud rappers with bad dreadlocks.
I don't even think they're SoundCloud rappers. I don't even know if they put anything out. I think they
just
legitimately
them?
are just like, no, we got famous from like one TikTok thing of us sort of freestyling in a pool with our pants on.
That's
Yep,
it.
that was it. And so maybe they're like, oh yeah, we're always in the studio hustling and shit like that. But it's like, it isn't like they had an album come out and then everybody's like, hey man, you know about the new Island Boys banger? And it's like,
Oh, man.
yeah, well, and they're born in Florida. You know,
Yeah,
like they're
yeah,
claiming
they're
like
Florida
Cuban
guys.
heritage, which whatever, they probably are, but you're still like Island Boys. In what way? Sorry, that is a peninsula?
Yeah,
You could
yeah.
be the Peninsula
From
Pals.
the Caribbean. Like, no, you're not from the Caribbean. You know?
No, fucking not even close. West Palm Beach, I believe.
Oh, wow. There's something about Florida. I don't know.
What the
I think
fuck?
I would love it because I love chaos
Yeah,
and beaches
well.
and nearly dead people. But I think that Florida, I would like to travel out to. And yeah. I've seen Magic Mike. I think I'm down with Florida.
You've seen Magic Mike. I've just seen the news. I'm like, I don't know, man. Florida man commits. Follow it up. Like it's always like the craziest shit is from down there. I don't know if
you're
it's
from
the heat or
Saskatoon,
the
it's like
swamp.
it's like Confederation or Pacific Heights in the summertime.
I guess
The whole
I wonder if
state.
It's like, I wonder if it's kind of because it's sort of isolated. Like, I mean, it's not like, you know, like it's basically an island, I guess.
It's like
is that
crazy bedazzled hillbillies.
Yeah.
This is what I think of when I think of Florida. It's like the Tiger King.
Yeah.
Is Florida
Yeah,
in a
no,
nutshell.
fair enough.
Affliction
And
and
where was, because I don't think he was from Florida, but
No,
like
but
right
that's-
adjacent, like the one that's
yeah.
like right beside it at the top of the coast there.
well, they got to have one
of
or
the
two
Gulf.
alligator kings.
Have you
down
watched
there.
the second?
Yeah,
Fucking.
yeah, that's
Jesus
very
goddamn
interesting.
Christ, eh?
There's some interesting revelations. Yeah, I don't want to be a spoiler, but fuck it. Yeah, apparently they set him up to take the fall, and he wasn't as guilty as they tried to make him seem. So, yeah,
Yeah, to some degree, hey.
Joe Exotic.
Well, and I mean,
victim of our age.
I guess, and they're like, well, or eventually snagged for something related to the things he's been doing, you know, because they're like, well,
Exactly.
we got him for this kind of phony attempted murder, and you're like, yeah, but he's been murdering these cats the whole time. They're not
Yeah,
profitable.
he was a pretty
He's been
shitty guy
dodging
across the board.
taxes. He's been using drugs to lure straight men in nonstop and turn them out. He's been acting like he's a savior of the community. He's like, I'm kind of like a halfway house. I give all these people work. He's like, no, you keep slaves that have no other options and are like losing parts working for you.
But they like it.
Yeah,
They like it.
They love it. Yeah, no,
Yeah.
right? When you don't know better,
It's got
of
hot
course
and
you
cold
do.
running meth.
Yeah, Jesus. I was thinking on the way over here that like we live kind of in a time where like when I was growing up, even if somebody I knew like an adult like only had their grade 9, I was like, oh, you quit to go farm, you know, or you went to go work in like a lumber mill or something like that. Now if somebody tells me as an adult, they're like, yeah, I got my grade 9, I'm like, so you've tried meth like for like 2 years, right?
Oh,
You know what I
really?
mean?
Is
That's
that
how I
the-
feel now on the drive
Ooh.
over here. I was thinking about that. And I'm like, yeah, because I start thinking about who I know like didn't finish high school that's like younger than me. And I'm like, no, it's never like, no, I had responsibilities I had to take care of and I had to go and work and I had whatever. It's like, no, you couldn't finish the program when there was some other fucking issue you had. So yeah, Russell's laughing. You can tell.
Man,
Because that's
I've-
kind of was growing up. It was like grade 12 was like, well, yeah, if you got it, that's cool. But you need grade 10, you know how to do math. You can fucking get around, right? Now I'm like, fuck, yeah.
Yeah, well, and drugs are an easy way to self-medicate
It's
after.
usually a way to get there.
Yeah, I went to the Sass Punk Festival one time, and man, that was a hard weekend. And our band was playing, and me and my buddy, we smoked speed the whole drive to the Sass Punk Festival. And so I wasn't hungry, but I sure was drinking lots of wine. Even during our set, I'm drinking wine out of a big squeeze bottle and sneaking out behind the stage to smoke speed by myself. And then we
Like
go
a
to the
gentleman.
after party, and like I'm very little food, very little sleep, a lot of wine, and lots of speed. And we're sitting in like pup tents with like 5 other people passing around meth pipes, and like, and I'm like, this is the grimiest fucking thing. Like, and then my buddy's like, hey Pat, try some of these, and he hands me a handful of mushrooms. Like it filled my entire palm, right? And I put them all in my mouth, but there wasn't enough to chew, like or no, too much to chew.
Yeah.
So I washed it down with booze, and because I hadn't eaten anything.
Yeah.
And about 5 to 10 minutes later, max 15 minutes, I felt the vibration, I felt the tingling, and I'm like, oh, fuck? I did
I mean, for
mushrooms.
one.
I hate mushrooms. Why the fuck did I do that? And I run into the
That's so
bushes
funny.
thinking maybe I can puke, but the green starts glowing really bright and throbbing, and I'm like, this is gonna hit me like a ton of bricks. I ate a lot of mushrooms, and I go back out and I'm looking for somewhere to duck into, and my buddy's like, come connect with me. I'm like, fuck you, you did this to me. Like, I'm not connecting with anybody. I spent the next 6 hours in the back of my station wagon under a blanket. I pushed our big cooler of booze out. I'm like, just get away from me. And I'm fucking lost my shit. Yeah. And I didn't do psychedelics for a very long time.
This is Bad Ideas, Good Stories with Dusty and Pat.
Yes. Episode 43. I'm Pat. That's Dusty.
Yeah. Yeah.
We have lots of
back to it.
Seemed like a good idea at the time. Yeah.
Yeah. No, yeah. Mushrooms always is a good idea. It's just the quantity and the quality that's the issue.
See, I guess that's the thing. You know, microdosing, I think, is very, very therapeutic. You open up neural pathways, or you develop new neural pathways, and you really have the choice to decide which directions you want to go if it's just a nice, controllable, small coming on, versus hero dosing, which is ridiculous amounts, and that energy, that drug, that experience is going to take you on a roller coaster, whether you like it or not.
Yeah.
And that's
Well,
kind
and
of
having a belly full of booze and no food and, you know, not necessarily the atmosphere for like fucking chill hangs, you know, all that contributes, I feel.
well, and there's the Carlos Castaneda idea that like all these drugs, whether it's peyote or marijuana or mushrooms, they're personalities. And he thinks peyote is a jealous mistress, so she doesn't like it if you fuck with other drugs before you take her, because she'll give you hell the whole trip. And I kind of think about that, like, how bad was I disrespecting that handful of mushrooms before? You know, meth is a whole other kind of mistress. Let's just say it's not a chill mistress.
Mistress?
Yeah, exactly. You know, so I think that the combination of things was a very disrespectful way to approach the mushroom energy, and it let me know for about 6 or 7 hours how.
Slap me up and down. That's awesome. I saw you were at some comedic fucking stand-up thing.
Checked out Yuck Yucks.
I saw that. Our friend Sean Cuthand was...
Sean, he was
belting up the
hilarious.
laughs.
He's got some new material. I really like it. It's some scathing reflections on colonialism a little bit. Growing up a native kid on John A. Macdonald Boulevard, which is legitimately, and like, it was right by my house, and I'm like, oh yeah, I guess that is a thing. He's like, yeah, I had love handles. I was a chubby little kid. He would have hated that.
Yeah,
I laughed
just talking
that
about being on a trampoline, bouncing closer to heaven, and
Or
pissing him
hell.
off. Yeah. So funny.
And then he had a bit about, there's a gang in Saskatoon called Terror Squad, and one of his favorite bands is a band called Terror, and he's an indigenous kid in Saskatoon wearing a terror hoodie when the police pull him over, which is kind of potentially complicated. Yeah, so he had to kind of weasel his way out of that. But yeah, he was, in my opinion, the funniest guy that performed, and he was the opener, very short, you know. Yeah.
Cool.
I don't even know the other people's names, but like there was a bigger lady, and like she was kind of like that trucker kind of lady vibe, and she was pretty funny. But then this like local bro dude guy came on, and I'm really kind of putting together the idea of like, I guess what everybody else calls white men, I call bro dudes.
Okay.
You know, does that make sense?
Sure.
You know, like I guess a lot of other people.
Well, that's
are
what
like,
I've said before. Like, we're basically Latinas.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
I don't know.
Like socioeconomically and shit like that. Like, I see a lot of shit going around. I'm like, well, I guess I'm technically that, but that's
and
not
that's just
me.
it. Like these guys that make a decent living, and they're all like big and semi-athletic football, hockey bros, and you know they hang out with their homies. It's like it is like white male entitlement encapsulated in a beer drinking construction worker culture, right? And I get that now, like, because watching Sean's, I laughed my ass off. Watching this lady, I laughed, but I couldn't relate to some stuff, like, you know, hungry vaginas and shit. But then this bro dude guy came on, and I can't relate to, you know, the bachelor party stories. It's Dane Cook.
Sure.
Right? It's the Dane Cook
man.
archetype, right?
Sure.
And like raw, and like there's not really a lot of insight going on, just a lot of movement and like.
Well, and I find exactly a lot of there's no substance with a lot of that shit, right? Like the story itself, you just told, you're like, that's kind of a lame fucking story. Like, there's really not anything to it. But no, bro, like, you don't get, though. Like, he was really banging her. And then they're like, yeah, really banging her. And like, that's the catchphrase, right? And then you're like, wait a minute, you're all kind of rapists, aren't you?
Yeah, you know, I guess there's just that element where it's that humor for a certain, you catch the humor that you relate to.
Yeah, true.
I think that's it. And And in a lot of ways, those, the bro guys, I don't relate to their humor. I don't follow the Rough Riders. I don't play hockey. I've never been to a Rush game, But Sean, holy fuck, me and my little corner of the table had some social work people, some youth outreach. It was a birthday party. And my partner, we're bursting out laughing. There was only 2 tables in the whole place that were getting half of his jokes. I don't think half of them even put John A. McDonald, an indigenous guy, together. What does that mean? Fuck, I don't even know. But
my last name's Goldstein, and I was raised on Hitler Boulevard.
Yeah, a little bit.
Are you getting closer to what we're getting at?
No, probably not. This is Saskatchewan. There's going to be a lot going over people's heads.
A slow burn. Actually, I did that. I was doing stand-up one night, and a friend of ours, Lish, was there with other friends, and she was giving me a hard time beforehand, and she's like, "Ooh, I'm not going to laugh anyways. Nothing you say is going to be funny, blah, blah, blah," right? Just trying to give me shit, hey? And so I get done my set, and everybody's like, "Yeah, fucking good set, blah, blah." She's like, "I didn't laugh once." I said, "Well, don't worry. Carlos will explain it to you in the truck on the way home." Well, she was not impressed with that, because if you know our friend Lish, a man explaining anything to her is not a great place to start. And so that always made me laugh. Someone else will explain.
I learned recently that a man explaining anything is mansplaining.
Sure.
Yes. So it's to the point where we can no longer clarify what we're talking about. Well, at least that was my experience. I was trying to explain to a friend how I'm like, why didn't you speak up in this situation? It's an easy thing just to kind of set your boundaries up and just say, hey, not really cool with that. And she's like, well, I don't want to rock the boat and I don't want to cause any problems. And I'm like, you realize that, like, even though Buddy here that was like kind of overstepping lines with you was kind of being a toxic man, but your hesitance to say anything because you don't want to rock the boat is kind of toxic femininity. Like, you don't want to cause any problems, so you're willing to endure a shitty situation.
Take the softer, gentler way out because I don't want to cause any shit.
Well, there's bullying and there's doormat, and I'm like, so it's kind of toxic femininity. And she's like, are you mansplaining toxic femininity to me? I'm like, no, because you didn't know what it was before I said it,
Well, here's my thing always, too. Have you tried understanding something?
Yeah.
I'm tired of things being explained to me all the time, but I'm like, okay, show me you understand the concept in the first place. Probably won't have this conversation, right? Am I just jumping boundaries constantly?
Well, it's getting to the point I can imagine, and I'm sure it's happening. Like, we're a few blocks away from our university here, that there's some, like, freshman student who's telling her prof, I don't appreciate the tone that you're mansplaining this course to me.
Well, that's your job, by the way. Is to explain, mansplain, womansplain, however you like to explain it. That's the gig.
Okay, take the textbook, read it. Here's your assignments. Don't listen to anything I have to teach you and fail. Or you can be taught by whoever's teaching and just deal with the consequences. Shitty. It's a man teaching you. So this situation, I was kind of like, I thought I was just sharing something you weren't aware of, but I guess I'm mansplaining. There's this weird movement right now, and we're stuck in the middle, and I find myself turning a little more traditionalist by the day.
Let them figure it out.
That's
what I say. Stop mansplaining, folks. Let them figure it out.
See, my partner. Let them figure it out.
Oh, my goodness.
Well, let all of them figure it out.
That's what I'm saying. Doesn't matter who it is that doesn't want to be told what to do or how to do it. By all means, you guys can just figure it out then.
Cough Hands up a lung and...
when you get out there and it's... Yeah, I'm not going to get on this fucking shit, honestly.
So this is the deal.
I gotta turn the fucking wheel.
Right?
I'm like slumped down in my chair right now. I'm like, I don't want to start on this.
Okay. So my partner, there's this saying that actually I learned about with the Cro-Mags, the band the Cro-Mags. They had an album called Age of Quarrel, and I'm like, what is this all about? And it's a Hindu philosophy of the Kali Yuga, when society gives up spirituality and there's like really a hyper materialism and like cruelty and quarrel. That's why they call it the Age of Quarrel or the Iron Age. And there's this saying that's called surf the Kali Yuga, which is kind of like stay on top of it. You know the shit's going on, but don't fall into it. Don't get too wrapped up in it, right? Or ride the tiger is another.
Some motherfuckers have gone through asteroids hitting the Earth and wiping almost everything out. You know what I mean? They rode that shit out.
Yeah,
There might have been lizards and squirrels and whatnot.
Now, at the same time, this term has largely been adopted by a lot of the alt-right, so you got to be careful. Well, yeah,
of course it is.
Yeah, you got to be careful when you use it.
Co-op something that has a relatively benign meaning and even positivity to it to build up a shitty group.
Yeah, because these guys will say, oh yeah, like degenerate society of multiculturalism and globalism. We've got to ride the tiger. And I'm like, no, that's not what it's about, but whatever, I'll just let you do your thing. Yeah. But there's legitimate people out here that recognize, like, there's some downward spiral shit happening. try not to get too sucked into it, like the right versus left fight. And I do all the time. But we also do a podcast where we discuss current events. And what else would we have to talk about?
Well, I tried telling somebody the other day, I'm like, neither of us are famous or have anything real special about us. So if anybody's tuning in, it's just for the quality of the conversations at this point. So you get what you goddamn get.
Gold. It's gold. So that's the thing. So now, oh God, this is like a recent development. I only learned about it this morning, and I didn't remember we were doing the podcast today. Have you heard about this new series on HBO called Santa Inc.?
Oh, yeah, Seth
Sarah
Rogen.
Silverman and Seth Rogen. And it is essentially an intersectional feminist take on the Christmas myth, portrayed by two very, proud Jewish actors who don't believe in Christ or Christmas. It can be.
That's the funniest thing to me. Like everybody's like, it's a Christmas movie, by a bunch of Jewish people,
Yeah.
They don't believe any
Who
of this.
basically say that Santa is a privileged white man that needs to be replaced by a Jewish female elf. This is
how of the time is that? You know what I mean?
Oh man, it's such to me.
Wait a minute, sorry. Do people think that's their opinion then, or do they realize that these are comedians and they probably figured out what's the funniest, fucking, most ridiculous thing we can do?
I don't think it's a parody. I think it's legitimately trying to advocate for a political narrative.
Okay,
and they've put out some literature where so first off, this is very interesting. So the Santa Inc. Trailer got put out, right? And coincidentally, right then, YouTube shut down the dislike button. You can't see how many dislikes you have.
You understand why that is, right?
Yeah. Why?
Because they were attacked immediately by white supremacists with all sorts of anti-Semitic comments.
There was some of that.
No, not some of that.
Oh, I checked out the comments. I read it.
Well, I'm sure if you're up to, that's why they shut that down. That was all the kickback. The
HBO shut down the comments, but also dislikes got shut down.
Sure, and maybe it's connected. Maybe you can't have any input into it.
So it's kind of interesting because if you have the Google Chrome extension, you can see the 3,000 likes of this video of people that would support it, if they have all the fans, and 156,000 dislikes, which is basically saying, for whatever reason, and I love Seth Rogen is like, you must be a white supremacist because you don't like our movie. That's really putting you in a weird situation. You don't like this movie, you must be a white supremacist. Well, what if it's because you're taking a children's tradition and you're putting fucking cunt and bitch all through the series, and you're trying to put a weird narrative on top of something that's actually a very long-standing tradition in our country?
That could be the complaint, but
that's part of it.
That could, sure. It seems to be the most vocal and most prevalent, though, were many people just attacking them, not attacking it based on the validity of the Christmas narrative or whatever, based on they're Jews. I can call her a cunt kike on fucking internet and get away with it. That's.
I didn't see a single
because
hateful
they pulled
comment.
Down many of them because they were caught immediately because they don't want to continue to perpetuate that sort of thing. They also said many of those accounts, when they started looking into who was putting up the negative stuff on it, troll accounts, guys tied to right wing ideology, that's where the journalism's followed.
There was also a fair amount of moms that are like, the language you're using and the context you're putting on a so-called Christmas thing, as somebody who this isn't even part of your culture, is so out of line. And me to say I don't like this, you are now, because of this tweet, saying you must be a white supremacist. We've upset the white supremacists if you don't like our movie, which is fucking ridiculous, man. That's ridiculous. The first thing,
it seems to be, though, that those were the profiles, the people that did put up other similar content that would show they probably do have white supremacist leanings, that were putting these comments up.
Well, the top voted comments, because there's only one that they shut down the comments, and that's the official HBO. There's a few mirrored, trailers up there with other people still allowed to post comments, and the top rated ones were debates about anti-Semitism and straight up people questioning, well, who are you to be talking about Christian holidays and stuff? Why, at the same time, well, no, for real.
How many Jewish executives are on every Christmas movie ever made?
Yeah.
How many Jewish writers are on this? They are comedians. I would assume that it's not an attack on Christmas. I would assume that it's them trying to either be controversial, stir some shit up, get some clicks, get some likes, get something. I don't think Sarah Silverman personally thinks that Santa Claus has to become a Jewish woman or she's going to boycott Christmas. You know what I mean? I think that they're making a movie, and I think that it's of the time, because clearly we're having this conversation that people are upset enough that it can't even just be, oh look, they made a goofy Christmas movie where they made it was a Jewish elf and it's going to be a woman. Have I seen? No, I haven't seen it, Pat. No, I
No,
haven't
have you seen the trailer?
Have I seen the trailer? No,
Yeah. Oh,
because I don't
okay.
care.
So,
When I
okay.
seen they're coming out with a Christmas movie with a Jewish thing, I said, okay, I don't give a shit, and I moved past it.
So I guess that's the thing. Like I've watched the trailers. I've watched.
No,
a
it's
lot
not
of,
the thing. I don't care about that. I don't need to watch it because I don't care about it.
Well, you
you
seem
cared enough about it
invested
to
in,
watch it, right? And then you want to have an opinion on it, I guess,
A
right? That's why you
conversation.
watched it. Okay.
Yeah, but no, I guess if you watch the trailer, you'll get a feeling for the context that they're framing Christmas, and you'll get if you read the comments, you'll see what people are actually saying. And I disagree with what they were doing, and I disagree the tone that they put it forward, and I disagree with a lot of the politics that they kind of shoved into a Christmas story for no reason other than to appeal to the lowest common denominator of woke culture in 2021. But that being said, I'm not invested in it. I disagree with it, and then I'll step away. Now, we have a podcast, we have conversations about things, and this is just something that came up this morning, and I guess that's just part of not getting sucked into, I guess, the narrative that's going on. And I believe that the narrative is happening out there.
Okay.
Now, I suggest checking it out on YouTube. Check out the what's it called? Santa Inc. is what it's called. I'd be interested in watching the show, but I'm not going to subscribe to HBO to see exactly how far it goes. And then there's also commentary. It's like, so why are all the reindeer have these like really urban or black guy accents? And they're saying like a lot of slang. That's very interesting. Why are all the reindeer the black characters? The elves are, the oppressed masses by these upper echelon white men that need to be replaced. Literally, they say this in the trailer, straight up. And it's an interesting... It's an interesting commentary going on. Yeah.
Could be.
Yeah.
Could be they thought a bunch of slang talking reindeers was funny.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, there's lots of things that are funny. Anyways, so what else you got on today?
I wrote down a big thing about aliens. That's what I wanted to talk about.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, there was a thing on Netflix that I was watching recently, and it was, top secret UFO projects declassified. Mm-hmm. Seems like a goofy kind of fucking title, but it's recent, and it's lots of stuff that I've seen before, talking about like Project Blue Book and a bunch of different stuff that's been like kind of sort of like it's sort of declassified. We know part of it, and they're talking about Area 51 and Roswell and all that other shit. But like I found it interesting first off because they were kind of talking about how the Majestic 12 started the same year as the CIA, which was the same year as the Roswell incident.
What's Majestic 12?
Okay, we'll start there then. So Majestic 12 was this supposedly behind-the-scenes group that there's been more information coming out in like the past 50 years that, they do exist. It is a thing that was established, supposedly made up of like heads of military, heads of science and tech and industry to kind of monitor and follow and figure out what to do with like alien encounters, alien tech, and started the same year as the Roswell incident. So the idea is that this alien thing happened in Roswell, right? So the same year they established this Majestic 12 to kind of keep an eye on that and something that can be maintained no matter who the president is. So for presidents, you might have the same group of Majestic 12 for 3, 4, 5, 6 presidents, whatever, right? But something that can kindly be contained continually, and you don't have to worry about a huge disclosure when there's a new presidential candidate because they don't have to know everything because they're not part of the apparatus for how this thing operates. Okay. And the CIA, again, established the same year, and they said that part of the context for that was, like, well, obviously was to do, like, espionage and, like, all the shady shit that the CIA does around the world and not in the U.S. because they're not supposed to operate there, but also was to monitor and maintain any kind of alien contact that other countries might be having. So they would have their apparatus set up in all these places so they can manipulate governments or do shit behind the scenes, but then they could also be tapped into like, hey, there was a crashed fucking site. Maybe we can get there first, get tech from it, re-engineer like they did with Roswell, which is supposedly what happened. And I just think, first off, it's interesting, like the whole Majestic 12 thing is interesting because it's like a cool episode on it, but it's just wild to me that like even this stuff being on Netflix, like it's like, one of the top 10, everybody's watching it. Because they kind of talk about how it's like, well, is there any sort of disclosure anymore? Like, is there any sort of
they
like
came out with
big
a
reveal
okay,
that like
so
kind of opens it up for everybody, or are we kind of just trickling along to there?
My take on it is I'm critical. I'm critical of a lot of the alien conspiracies. I've been into it since I was a kid. Graham, my brother, is quite into this stuff. I'm more critical.
Yeah.
I like to see the videos with my eyes. I like to see the evidence with my eyes. And, you know, the declassified elements where they said, okay, these are videos that we know that are out there and we don't know what they are. Yeah. So that's kind of my angle on it. That's as far as I'm willing
That's the shit I find really interesting too. The rest of it, it's like, I like to hear it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But it's not like I necessarily
go
believe any of it. But yeah, the concept that there is technology that we don't understand, that the government isn't letting us see all of it, I find that quite believable.
I think that's a given.
Yeah, right? I find that quite believable.
It's the same thing as the NSA data mining. Like, everybody was like, that's like a conspiracy. And they're like, no, it's actually absolutely proven. They're like, well, that's wrong. Well, too late.
Yeah.
Shitty for you.
It is wrong. It's what they've been doing.
Don't say it on your iPhone. But that being said, a lot of that stuff I'm very interested in. And, you know, it is being slowly talked about, and it's just becoming commonplace that when finally people will say, okay, so this is the hypothetically, this is the situation, and we have been in contact with aliens, or we have alien technology, even if we haven't been in contact with them, we've been using stuff that's obviously beyond our capabilities, then people be like, yeah, so right? It's been happening for years. We know this already.
And that was kind of their point in a lot of this. Like, this is kind of what they've been doing, and you're like, yeah, this show is a perfect example of them doing it. The fact that you're even allowed to come out and like seem credible talking about this. And I mean, they do, like, it's wild, the level of like credible people now that are involved in a lot of these, where it was just the crazy fringe guys before they had the late night radio shows, right? These are like, you know, former defense secretaries and like people that are like, no, they're legit. They seem to know what they're talking about, and they're not giving these like crazy accounts of stuff. They're giving what seems like pretty reasonable accounts of what they know, you know, not claiming big things, going like, well, this is...
The ones that really impress me are the ones that are actually servicemen, that are either, you know, in the service still, that have been declassified enough to go make public accounts of, yeah, I saw a flying Tic Tac. Yes. And it was swirling, and it changed directions in ways that no technology we're familiar with can. Now, that is very impressive to me, because that's a very agnostic attitude. You know, like the idea of like, I know something's there, but I don't know what it is, right? And I really appreciate that. That's a scientific attitude, as opposed to like the faithful attitude, which is like, I know it's aliens. You know, that kind of shit. So, and I see a lot of like, I have some issues with some documentaries. Like, my partner and I got Gaia for a while.
Sure,
Don't get Gaia. Don't.
I just had a conversation about Gaia with somebody the other day.
I've never seen a streaming service give so much platform to obvious schizophrenics before. These people are...
Can you scrape together 45 minutes in front of a green screen?
Scrape it together. Can you narrow it down to a series of 8 fucking seasons?
That's so funny.
And so, and like listening to the alien conspiracies on Gaia were so ridiculous, because there were so many Kool-Aid drinking true believers. And it's funny because they'll have 6 different true believers, all with the 100% true story of how I am a 6 million year old entity reborn in a human body from alien planet Sirius or Sirius star system. And then the next guy is like, I'm never going to age because I don't believe in aging, and like crazy woo shit. And I'm an agnostic. I'm like, you never know, but I don't believe that. You know what I mean? And so when I watch a lot of the documentaries, I like to follow up sources. I think that's kind of an important, like, is this guy just disgruntled? Did he get like let go with a dishonorable discharge and he's like, fuck these guys, you know? But increasingly there's legitimate people coming out with legitimate stories, and there's no incentive, I guess, for them to say this shit.
Most of them, it's been nothing but negative for them to do it.
It's not
They've
like,
been
buy
nothing
my
but
book.
constantly discredited. Well, and they say like too, like again, talking during this one about the Majestic 12, they said like even the idea of aliens and stuff was constantly being debunked by the government to keep people guessing and not really thinking. Like they said, I don't know if you're familiar with the Phoenix Lights. I think it was 1997. This like huge triangle-shaped object seen over top of Phoenix by tens or even hundreds of thousands of people. Like tons of people recorded it. Definitely appeared to be like some sort of shit we don't normally have, right?
100%. And I love that language.
Yes. Yes, some sort of shit we don't normally have. That's
the
best we can do. And what's interesting about this too is actually the actor Kurt Russell was the first person to report them, because he's an avid pilot and was flying over Phoenix that night and was like, hey, there's some fucked up lights down here. What's going on? And so anyways, they had a press conference after this where I can't remember if it was the deputy or of police or the mayor or whoever has a little press conference, and then like, oh, we've got a witness to this, and they bring this guy out in an alien suit making a joke about it, hey? And they said, like, this guy after he retired, he's like, well, that was a purposeful effort for us to try and get people off the idea of it being aliens, because we didn't want them asking more questions and looking further into it.
See, and that's just it. I think that there's potential for the scientific investigation on this.
Yeah.
But just like any legitimate theory, it gets hijacked by the whack jobs. And next thing you know, you're going to have the Roswell, I want to believe, wearing the T-shirts and the weed smoking alien guys that are meditating over crystals and, and the whole legitimate inquiry gets co-opted by the whack
And that was
jobs.
part of that Project Blue Book. They purposely did that. They purposely seeded mistrust in these communities. They would bolster nut jobs. Yeah, he's right. And then of course it discredits the whole, right? And then they again still control the CIA, whoever still controls the
What
information.
disclosure is
so
allowed
they don't
to
give a
come
fuck what everybody thinks. You know what I mean? Like as far as they don't know everything and they can control it, they still have it.
I got a lot of complicated opinions on aliens. Like my spirituality believes in the cohesion of all living life, or all life, or all reality. To be perfectly honest, and I think that it's just logic that there is life outside our sphere of control or understanding, right? If we can go down to a microscopic level and see water bears that can survive outside through fire, through lava, through submersion at the bottom of the sea, outside our atmosphere, they sent them to the moon and they think they're still alive on the moon.
Just chilling.
And those are, what are the tardigrades? Isn't that what they're called?
Yeah.
So those little fuckers can survive through that. And we just discovered them relatively recently.
Been around us the whole time.
Yes, but they've been here forever.
Right? Yeah, they're not new.
And then recognizing that the ecosystem itself is also a living kind of entity, that everything needs to be operating in harmony, then why is it that we aren't part of a larger thing that other things are also part of?
Yeah.
Now that's
how does that concept only exist on this sphere? There's no other spheres in the vastness of fucking space that concept can just appear.
So that continuity is the root of my spirituality. Right.
Okay.
And like respecting that and trying to understand it the best as possible.
Sure.
Now that my spirituality would allow aliens to land and it would be like, yeah, that's nothing new to me. But the spirituality of our societies of like human first dominance over the planet, well, that's going to get really upset when all of a sudden a more superior species come and all of these we're the top of the food chain types realize that we're not.
Still believe in food chains?
Yeah, exactly. Because they like us as livestock.
You only like it when it benefits you. Yeah,
Right,
you only like that shit when you're at the top.
I'm so tired of listening to people go off about hierarchies when they're only at the top. You never hear people talk about hierarchies when they're actually just part of a larger. There's higher than me, right? Yeah, hierarchies are great when I'm at the bottom. No, you don't hear that as much as the people that really want to.
But I have the illusion that one day I can get up this.
So yeah, I think for a long time, if this is a big if, the agnostic if they did have information on alien cultures, they realized how much it would upset the human-centric model of our reality. And how can you be a meat eater if you don't want to be meat? How can you be human dominant on this planet?
Expand the industrial meat system. They're like cows, humans, whatever.
Yeah, right. You're just a product
this thing
now,
will
bro.
still work, yeah.
And so that's kind of like my thing where, and I think, realistically, my philosophy is largely based off of Hindu philosophy where there is connectiveness and reincarnation and all of those things, cyclical, perennial thinking.
And flying machines, Vimanas, stuff that they said there was aliens and shit, or not necessarily aliens, but there was flying craft and their gods were using them. And
so in the event that an advanced society were to just show up from wherever, inside the earth, outside the earth, interdimensionally just appear because we can transverse our dimensional limitations, Hinduism would kind of say, okay, yeah, that fits.
Checks out.
Right? Yeah. But Christianity, Islam, Judaism, no. It's but no, we're God's chosen tribe. Yeah. We're the special ones. No, not you over there, not your island, not your planet, your universe, your whatever. But that idea of that old school, like, what do they call it? Solar systems solar faith, where they looked at the sun as being the most powerful thing in our sphere, in our or in our solar system. Yeah. But then every single star is a different God form, out there. And when you look at it, it just makes sense that there's lots of different planets with lots of different beliefs, but there should be a continuity. And that's the idea behind what do they call it? Traditionalism, where that all religions come around one root, but it makes room for if all of a sudden, like, think about aliens. What's people's fear about aliens landing here?
Well, okay. So I think if you're in that upper echelon where you do kind of have control over financial institutions and the shit that makes us a society,
nation,
right?
prisons.
Yes, all that shit, right? If you have some level of control over that, a lot of that starts to dissipate almost immediately, right? Because people are just like be flabbergasted, dumbfounded, and be like, well, what the fuck? Why am I participating in this stuff when there's all this other crazy shit in the universe that I don't give a fuck about my job at the grocery store anymore, you know? So they're slightly concerned about that. They were more concerned, I think, about the loss of religious control, because then, again, not everybody is open-minded about religion where they're like, no, I can still believe the things I believe and believe that there's going to be aliens and stuff.
I think there'd be a lot of shattered egos.
Exactly, right? And then how does that manifest? Like, do people... Like, say, do Catholics all of a sudden all go to the fucking Vatican and just tear the walls down and pull the gold off and grab everything? You know, they're
publish
just like,
all
you know
the
what I mean?
books they've been
yeah,
doing.
yeah.
You know,
How does that turn around, right?
And all of a sudden, it's all out there.
And
we knew the whole time.
Yeah, most of them I think don't think it would be a positive thing, right? You know, most people in control are never like, you know, I give them a bunch of information. People are usually pretty good at digesting it. Rarely does anybody freak out. You know?
Now, I think that there's a model on that upper echelon that hypothetically, if something came from out of our realm of experience, like aliens showed up, that they could negotiate because they've got the resources. Do you want gold? Do you want lumber? Do you want humans? Do you want livestock?
Yes.
Here, take them. Take them. You know, just give us some technology, and we can disappear a section of society, and they just go missing. Here's your human trafficking.
Again, I'm not super boned up on lots of this, but I think lots of the older religions like the Egyptians and shit like that, like they had stories of that where these were the go-betweens. These people were the conduits for the gods. Exactly. Yeah. You were human and you had the powers they did because they gave them to you through their magical powers or technology or whatever the fuck it was.
The Japanese emperor
you
is
gave
supposed
them
to be
what
a
they
god
needed.
on Earth. The Egyptian emperors were gods on Earth. The Mayans, they had the whole voluntary human sacrifice, you know, for the greater, you know, the earth gods. The blood fertilized the earth, and that's where the corn would grow from, and the maize and all of that. So I think that's that pyramid. Okay, the whole hierarchy trip, the pyramid-shaped power structures that we talk about come handed down largely from the Egyptian mindset, where they are the god kings that have the right to rule over everybody else, and there's a hierarchy that goes down. And
and it's interesting then, because it's like, if it was just a matter of ascension through different levels, well, it should never be a pyramid. Right? Maybe that's the power you get, but how it's dispersed should never be. There should be some people at the middle, and there's a bunch here for some reason because you can get to this level. And, you know, like the idea that there'd be a whole bunch of god kings walking around the earth because we can all get there.
We're all
it's
god
like,
kings.
It's like, well, right? But you need to have, for you to be separated from the rest of them, you have to have the control of the ones underneath you. They're not allowed to ascend to that level.
And you're not allowed to read these books and to do these meditations and to learn this ritual or learn how to mind hack or hypnosis or any of that stuff. Now, when I was crazy, because I've been crazy several times, I was convinced that altered states of consciousness are sort of like having the cell phone number to whatever, alter or outside consciousness, straight up. Like, what if it's having, when you get into that meditative state and you get to a certain point, you all of a sudden, whether you like it or not, get a phone call from other dimensional entities, aliens. Maybe it's outside our planetary system. Maybe it's outside our reality. Maybe it's right here around us, but beyond time and space. And suddenly you're getting messages. And the psych wards are full of people that are getting the same messages.
They haven't been eating the mushrooms, though.
Yeah, right. The mushrooms, the acid, the meth.
If you're not using the tool.
Well, yeah. Well, there's tons of those tools. Like you have the Kabbalah, you have the yoga, you have Kundalini yoga, you've got meditation, mesmerism, all of this stuff that's been handed down through mystery schools through the years. And who's to say that, like, what one person would consider an angel, the other wouldn't consider an alien? You know?
Well, then that was kind of the premise of the original season of Ancient Aliens, was the idea that they talked about all these like biblical stories, and like, yeah, but what if you seen it with today's eyes and an understanding of technology? Would you still think it's an angel?
True.
Or would you think it was an advanced being of some sort that maybe was an alien? You know, would you still think it was the voice of a higher being god, or would you think that it is something connected to something else in the universe?
And that crossover is very, very valid. What frustrated me about Ancient Aliens was eventually, and it didn't take very long, it turned into like, so obviously it has to be alien.
Oh, yeah, right.
And I'm like, wow, that's a big jump, man. Like, I love the hypothesis, you know, as opposed to coming to the conclusion without the proof, right? And that the crazy hair guy is notorious
even
for
just
that.
the prospect of a different perspective. Like, this is what we think about this, but now look at it through this lens, the lens of advanced technology. Now, do you still think the same thing, right? And that's what I liked about it. But yeah, and I think that shit is like, of course, the crazier the fucking guests, the more people turn in to just be like, what's this fucking asshole going to say? But you still get to get a lot of the shit that you're interested in. But I agree. Yeah, it got to be a meme pretty quick, and they were doing lots of the flashback fucking reenactments and stuff like this is how it was done, and you're just like okay, yeah.
This is how it was
All
done.
right, it's entertaining. I'll sit through this, but yeah, I kind of want to get back to you telling me like the carbon dating on this shit, and then being like, well, no, we thought civilization started like 8,000 to 10,000 years ago.
Yeah, right.
Now we see Göbekli Tepe in Turkey, where it's like, no, it's more like 15,000 years ago. We were having communities and shit,
And huge temples.
Well, and to me, I'm like, if you until you find out something like that, you think that human civilization has basically only been not, like making groups, doing societies, that kind of shit for 8,000 to 10,000 years. And you think this is how much we advanced. Mm-hmm. But now you increase that by 15,000, to 15,000. So it's another 50%, let's say.
Well, it's even more now.
Well, exactly, right? Maybe it's 18,000, maybe it's 20,000. But now, do we still think that we've still only, in all that amount of time, is this as much technological advancement as we've ever had? Or is it possible that like in the first, of that 20,000, in the first 10, we had other technological advancements that have been lost since that new 10,000 started, which was apparently about the same time as an ice age in a lot of places where there was societies formed. So there's a chance, fucking shit did get wiped out and reset for a bit, and we got set back a couple thousand years.
Well, my big thing is a lot of that advanced technology, we'd still be kind of coming across some remnants of it, as opposed to just like corded ware and pottery and
see, but here's the thing though, I think if it existed alongside that low level technology of thing, like say, because like I mentioned one time about like the obelisks and the possibility that they were kind of like transmission devices for frequency, right? So like just say that was a thing they were doing back then with the science they had that we don't do today, but it was still alongside reed boats pushing them down the Nile, right? I think there may have been some combination of that. And again, that could still be, like with Egyptian, for example, say that was hung over civilization shit from a more advanced one. That was the lingering shit.
Yeah, that
right?
was the deteriorated version of that.
We're two fucking catastrophes removed from it.
That's a good point. It could be.
And we could be 10,
400, 500 feet under the ground.
And I don't know the lineage of like human development, but I think about 100,000 years seems about right in my head for like we went from being kind of basically cavemen to more what we are as modern people, same brain size, all that kind of shit, right? And then everything else is just what you're eating, where you're living, how you develop, groups you get into, grow society shit, right? So if you think of that though, it's like in 100,000 years, and we claim to have had so much advancement in 10 to 12,000 years, or even 20,000 years. Well, even at 20, you're still looking at like 5 potential wipeouts where we've done that same amount of work with basically the same shell to work with. Basically the same kind of brain.
We haven't advanced that much over the last, like
physically, right? We didn't grow extra tails. None of us are like, significantly taller by feet.
Missing link between like Neanderthal and Cro-Magnon and then Homo sapiens. There is that strange missing link, and there's some theories of the aquatic ape, like all of a sudden our body became streamlined, all the hair on our body became streamlined. We're born with a layer of blubber, like an aquatic animal, or like a like a whale or a dolphin, as opposed to any other primates. All of our hair is streamlined. We're the only primate with streamlined hair. There's a ton webbing between our hands and our toes. There's a ton of evidence that points towards at least a splicing of DNA with an aquatic species to some degree, or that we went to the ocean, which is why our remains for that generation of transitional ape can't be found, because the ocean clears itself out. Right?
Sure. Well, and as we got, if you're living like in North Africa, for example, and it wasn't a time of fertility, because it seems to have gone through cycles there, right? If you're getting to the coast, which is where you would probably want to live, where it's going to be most consistent.
There's still kelp. There's still fish. There's still crayfish.
There's all that, right? So as you get out of those plains, out of the jungle, out of the plains, closer to the shore, I would think even just through evolution, you would start to develop the things. The strongest swimmers were the guys that for some reason had kind of webbing between their hands, right?
See, okay, this is an interesting thing about evolution that's changed since I was in school, right? Because when I was in school, I was taught that Darwinian evolution was pure fluke, simply fluke.
Oh, really?
Yeah. That those that were not prepared to survive died off, and those that were survived. But new studies in evolution, in epigenetics, and what has to happen is that almost genetics adapts itself to the environment it finds itself in.
Yeah.
So after X amount of generations, like animals living in cold environments, their genetics start going click, click, click. Looks like we need more blubber.
Yeah.
Looks like we need more insulation. Looks like we need to be able to survive through the winters, so we're going to have to put that extra weight on, as opposed to those animals living in desert climates? Well, we need to be able to retain some water somehow. Like that kind of stuff. Like the genetics starts clicking in adaptation to the environment, as opposed to the idea when I was in school where they taught us it was all pure fluke.
See, and what I understood it to be was that it was that, yes, like it is the best suited for that environment, but it's through breeding also, right?
Eventually, yes.
Because the best suited are going to continue to be the best bred, generally speaking.
Let's just say,
so you're going to get the layers of fat on the ones that needed it, because those are the ones they're breeding.
There's a few babies that are born with fatter bodies,
Yep.
so therefore
They're
they
lasting
can
longer.
survive,
Yep.
and they
Having
have
more
more
babies.
likelihood to breed,
Yep.
and their babies will be passing on those genetics,
Yep.
which is basically, it makes total sense. Like that mutations happen, and some are advantageous and some aren't, and those that aren't fall away, and those that are adapt, right?
Yeah.
Like if all of a sudden there was a person who could jump and fly for a second, he would probably play basketball and make lots of babies.
Just slanging cock too.
Yeah, exactly. Making lots of babies, because I want a baby with that guy that
doesn't
can
want a flying baby?
Yeah, exactly. Next thing
start
you know,
milking
there's a
that
whole
guy.
generation. 100%.
Yeah.
100%. So the idea that like if we went away from the jungles, or if the jungles became uninhabited, or our resources, or hell, even like there was a furious type of primate that was killing off these nice gentler ones, and they said, fuck it, we're going to go to the beaches and we're going to learn to swim, and we're going to dive for our food. Well, sooner or later, those that are better at diving get more food, live longer, or more desirable, have more resources,
More temperate weather. I mean, you look at every country when it's glowing at night. Hey, it's the coasts that are lit up, right? That's where we go. That's where we huddle. It's
where we land.
and it's where we land, and it's what we go to. Because I mean, the West Coast was not where we landed, right? We went all the fucking way across mountains and everything else we could to get to another ocean. To get to the same thing on the other side, right?
Well, and the coasts are a treasure trove for natural resources if you are just trying to survive. It's a natural climate for people to survive without clothes. There's fish to eat. There's shellfish. There's coconuts. There's housing options for, like, there's tons of reasons why we could be an aquatic. That could be the thing. But back to the aliens, to call back, there's a big movement that says that an alien species spliced in DNA to make an artificial like a hybrid, you know? And there's the biblical stuff that talk about the Nephilim, like the Elohim were like the watcher angels, and they bred with the most beautiful sons of man and created a race of giants called the Nephilim. And the Nephilim were destroyed and stuff. And a lot of people interpret that to be an alien interaction, right?
Yeah.
So if it's purely like a spiritual metaphor, how can angels breed with men to create giants?
Metaphorically.
Right? Yeah, metaphor.
They were
What is that metaphor?
They were emotional giants. They had really big personalities. No, I totally
They were
fucking think
big
that's the shit that makes more sense to me. You know what I mean? That they and like even the idea that like that back in the day everybody was just, well, no, it was a story about a guy with a bird head. I was actually telling somebody this recently, and I think maybe we've talked about this before, but I went to the Louvre in Paris, and I went to the Egyptian exhibit. And I was looking at the fucking sculptures they had there of crocodiles and panthers and all that other shit, right alongside all the guys with bird heads and whatever else. And it kind of clicked to me for a second that I was like,
They're very literal.
It's very fucking literal, and the musculature and the way they stand and all that kind of shit. Like you know what you were doing. You saw this, and I even started to think like, if it was just a guy with a bird head, you'd kind of be able to describe it the first time, even if it was something made up, whatever, but you'd still get different variations of it, right? And then people wouldn't put hundreds of hours into hand making these fucking things and have them be exactly the fucking same representation of Thoth or whoever, right? Like, to me, when I seen that, I was kind of like, nah, as much as people have seen a jaguar, they saw this, you know?
So my take on that, there's a few different possibilities, is like, one is, don't fuck with the priesthood. Okay. Right? If the priesthood tells you this is how something's going to look like, and then you say, no, I think it's over here, they'll just eliminate you because you're a heretic.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. They trim that shit down.
Yeah. And so there's that element where this is the official canon of how these gods are supposed to look. But okay, so then there's also the animist shaman, because a lot of this stuff comes from like shamanic ceremony. If you could imagine some guys in a tribal situation, and they're in a little pup tent in a circle smoking meth. No, they're in their little whatever hut, and they're smoking whatever sacred herbs that are on the fire, and they're inhaling it, and they're all getting collective visions together. Then maybe these visions gave birth to, like the Ra and the Osiris and the Anubis and all of that stuff. And they're like, but this is a little bit more of an elevated society where they're like, okay, I remember we've talked about this, and I'm like, well, what about it's the principle of the bird as a human and stuff like that. But I tend to think that
And that's been the explanation given.
Yeah.
Right? That these are characteristics.
Yeah.
That they're like, well, no, like we don't ever think there was really a bird-headed god, but this was the guy that represented these different things. But then it's like, yeah, but they just, everything else they saw was very, very literal. Another thing that kind of made it click for me too about literal interpretations of things was an interpretation of cave drawings.
Okay.
And one was, it was the animals, and they were like, it was kind of like little circular kind of blobs at the bottom in a row with long, skinny, look like legs, and then little bodies on top. You know what I mean? And they look like really misshapen kind of animal representations of what they were. Until you put them right beside a satellite down top vision of elephants and giraffes at sunset with long, elongated shadows off them. Then when I seen it beside that, I went, well, that's exactly what the fuck that is. Like, that's exactly what it looks like. And it looks like a top-down view of this.
Oh,
and then you go, well, how the fuck did they get a satellite image of this to even have the concept of that?
Well, one of the similar phenomena, slightly different, are the huge land carvings and land
Petroglyphs?
Yeah, is that what they're called?
I believe
Petroglyphs?
so.
Yeah, and they're like huge people that you wouldn't see on the ground.
You have no concept when you're standing in them.
But all of a sudden, when you get up in a helicopter or something, you can see what it is on the ground.
Yeah.
And these are from people that had no access to that knowledge.
Not even a vantage point to appreciate it
No,
from.
and how could they figure out how to do it? How,
Right.
like, was that all mathematics? This is the ratio. We're
on
going to
that
have to make
scale?
it from this hill over here, over that hill is going to be the head, and that
Yeah.
way on the horizon, that's going to be
It's not you and your buddies making a big dick in the park after the first snowstorm.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah.
It's miles. It's massive.
Yeah, and it's... And
Although
it
to be said,
lasts.
get enough buddies make a big enough dick, I guess.
Yeah, yeah,
But
but
you
like-
still have to have the communication skills, the planning skills, all that shit. Be able to put it down, communicate it effectively to hundreds of people. Then if you're working on that scale,
over years to
which
do...
which again is tough when it's like a lot of these societies when they start dating them, they're like, well, they didn't have writing, they didn't have a concept of words, and they still made this, or whatever,
yeah,
right? Like
they somehow
I'm exaggerating
communicated
slightly, but it's not
the-
like today, right?
Well, they communicated what needed to happen, and a lot of those are in Europe. The ley line stuff and the petroglyphs, the bird shapes and the walking men and things like that. But okay, so this is the other element.
Peru's got lots of those too. I
Yeah,
think.
Peruvian architecture, the ancient Peruvian stuff blows my mind. But
Lake Titicaca is supposed to be like a real trip if a person ever gets a chance to like learn about
is
it.
that what
and
that's
shit.
called? Where
that's
the,
that
the
one.
seamless kind of building? Where
Oh
it's-
no, that's I know. I think that's Pumapunku.
Oh, jeez.
But
The fact that you know these
but
names, man.
but
Like
no,
Titicaca is a
Lake
real thing?
Titicaca is like up, and it's right by Machu Picchu.
Okay.
And I don't think it's like right by, but I think it's in the same fucking area. Again, don't quote me on this, but it's a lake, and I believe it's a man-made lake. And the legend is that there was all this gold that was sunk down at the bottom of this lake that they couldn't find. Blah blah blah. But it's one of these hotbeds for seeing UFOs and USOs, where people see things come in and out of the water there, and of course the people living in the area have for thousands of years as well.
So there's one theory possibly floating around that instead of coming from outside our atmosphere, that these things are coming from depths of the ocean that we can't access, which there's tons. Like, we haven't investigated 70% of the ocean floor.
Yep.
Which the ocean makes up 70% of our planet. So
Well,
how much of
and-
our planet do we actually know?
And most of the knowledge about the interior is absolutely fucking theoretical, because we haven't even, you can't drill down deep enough to get a core to really, or sample to find out what's really there. We can assume, we can look at the structure of other things, guess by weight and however the fuck they
Volcanoes
work
and-
it, right?
yeah, yeah.
Like there's a lot of shit going on I don't even understand to them, trying to figure out that it's a molten core and all that kind of shit. But as far as actually knowing if there's massive caverns down there and shit could exist, because that's one of the theories is of this inner earth, that beings have been avoiding cataclysms on the surface by going back into the inner earth, riding out the cataclysm, and then maintaining some of that technological advancement that we talked about that had been wiped out. Like that was
They're surfing the Kali Yuga.
that was exactly yeah. But that's where it gets ugly, because it was like that was the Admiral Byrd story where he'd flown into the inner earth and made contact with these beings, and supposedly the Nazis had as well, and were maybe even using some of their technology.
Yeah, the
for, like,
Nazis had a whole trip about it. And as a matter of fact, the esoteric roots of Nazis, they believed
Yeah,
that
man.
the Aryans were descended from, and it was from a fictional book, I believe, but an underground, Nordic race of tall, like either pre-deluge people,
Yep.
Atlanteans or aliens
Yep.
that gave birth to the first technology and gave birth to, the technology that came down into India that was based off of the Hinduism was based off of, that they were the Aryan people,
Sure.
that the original, the ones that gave birth to the quote unquote Aryan people, Indo-Aryan, like coming down from like I guess Ukraine, Russia area down into India and brought the Rig Veda and chariots and horses. They were called the Aryans, and they gave birth to the caste system of Hinduism. So the Brahmin caste was usually say, we descended from the Aryans. You'll notice some of us have blue eyes, right? And this is in India. So the Nazis played with that idea and said, well, obviously the most advanced people in the world also moved up north to the Germanic, and that's where they got their mythology from. So that, and their big part of it is that under earth or hollow earth theory, there's huge caverns and, man, I got books by idiots that are. Well, I don't want to sound like an asshole.
I got books by idiots over here.
Oh my God! This one. Oh, his whole book was just trying to prove this, and he's largely debunked by archaeologists. But he does have some interesting theories, and it's a gateway to thinking. It's a gateway to.
It's all I want.
It's a
I just want a
hypothesis.
different perspective. I want a different lens, and go, I never thought of looking at it like that. The possibility that eventually people figured out that, like, fuck, we keep getting fucked over every time there's a major snowstorm. Maybe we should all get underground for a bit. Figure out how to do that for a while.
Yeah.
Right.
Well,
and why wouldn't they? Why wouldn't there? In all the people in all the world, when there's all these major cataclysms and shit's wiped out, and we lost massive amounts of population and whatever else. Why wouldn't somebody at some point fucking hide underground?
We went to Cuba and we went down into a mine area, or what's it called? We went down into a cavern in Cuba, and apparently it's a national treasure, so you're only allowed to walk certain areas. It is, I think, they said they've mapped 23 kilometers under the ground. Underground of these caverns, and they open up into like geodes and crazy stuff, and it was crazy down there. It was crazy. The stuff that they did show us was crazy impressive. It would open up into huge areas and then get really tight, but the fact that they mapped out like over 20 kilometers, and that's when they stopped going. They're like, this just keeps going. And
Really?
and the people, man, there's been a couple where they've gone down. I think it might have been in Poland. They found an underground cave, and after they went to a point where they had to kind of spelunk to get there, they came to an area where the ground was level and the walls were level, like they had been like designed, right?
Interesting.
And like, how can you get any machinery in here, right? So that stuff's really interesting, and I think that's valid to consider. Not to jump to conclusions, but valid to consider what's actually happening out there, and it keeps us occupied for a while. I guess it's entertaining.
I love hearing about it.
Yeah, it's entertaining. My thing is, I'd like to just kind of wait until they've confirmed. Tell me the conclusions. Show me I don't want to hear all the hypotheses.
It's starting to get that there is more like. It's hard to dispute that it's not proof at this point. And like one of the things they talked about in the one episode I was watching of that shit was the Academy of the Stars, like that the Tom DeLonge, Stephen Greer. It's kind of like the big disclosure movement right now.
Oh, okay.
And they've got so many contacts like within the fucking military and whatever else that a lot of the stuff they're getting disclosed seems to be very legitimate. And one of them was like appears to be like kind of the first real legitimate video of a UFO taken by the military. And
is it one of the Tic Tac ones?
I think so, yeah. And it was, again, something very unexplainable. But in detailed description by the pilots, what they saw, what they all took in and going like, well, I don't know what the fuck it is, but I ain't never seen nothing move like that.
And that's super valid. Now, this is another thing, because I follow a lot of like artificial intelligence and transhumanists articles and stuff like that. And right now, theoretically, they've figured out mathematically how time travel could work. And the movements and the advancement in artificial intelligence and technology and robotics, who's to say what we're experiencing as coming from outside of our dimension isn't literally bypassing time and coming from the future, or it's a drone to say, hey, what happened in the later part of the 20th and early part of the 21st century that set things in one direction that maybe we could... maybe it's just like a drone, right? Yeah, well, like that's just it. We send drones over tribal people that have never been discovered, and they're like, "What the fuck is that?" Shoot arrows at it, right?
Yep.
And all we're doing is
drones are
watching them.
UFOs as far as I'm concerned. You
Right?
know what I mean? Everything I've ever seen, I'm like, looks like a goddamn drone moving around.
And all they're doing is watching them. They want to observe them without interrupting. They want to observe them, but they say, "What is that thing?" And they shoot their arrows at it, and they're like, "No, don't fuck with them. Don't fuck with them because they're untouched, right?"
Well, and that's kind of the angle that like even this slow disclosure thing paints for us. Like we're the tribal group. They're coming in going like, hey, you guys got nukes? Yeah, pump the brakes on that a little bit because
You guys
that
are
was
still eating each
one
other?
Yeah, right. You haven't ascended all to that other level yet. Yeah, where you realize this consciousness is going from you to that thing to the other thing.
Oh, right. Or consciousness, or just like, man, like you guys are still very barbaric.
Yeah.
You know, for all of you're conning yourself that you are the highest, like, moral, ethical, intelligent species on the earth. You sure fucked up your ecosystems, right? You really stepped outside of it. Like maybe, and God forbid, you know, they show up and they say, okay, we got to teach you how ecosystems work.
Yeah.
Right.
You guys figured out all this technology and all you did was figure out how to keep people working all the time?
Yeah.
Why didn't you figure out how to get people not working all the time? Why didn't you do that?
Or enslaving entire species
Yeah.
of your kin animals? Like,
Yeah,
fuck,
wouldn't
man.
that be funny too if that's like the fucking they show up, right, and you've got your whole upper echelons that everybody's running shit, the Majestic 12, whatever, they come up, look, we can control these masses, we know how to do it, we just have to work with you. They're like, cool, okay, laser these ones and then let's go talk to everybody else.
Yeah,
hey,
yeah.
disperse the shit amongst the masses.
We're going to find the Australian Aborigines, the African Aborigines, the tribal people that have really been fucked that actually didn't come that
That
far.
probably wouldn't even throw shit at us if we came down there. They go, well, fuck, these are the guys we've been talking about
We've
the
been
whole
waiting
time.
for you.
I think it's the Dogon tribe in Africa that like they do these elaborate dances where they put on these big outfits that supposedly represent gods that had come down and visited them from the heavens previously, and they look just like spacesuits. You know, so it's kind of a trip to be like, you know, like
Well, there's that. There's been a few.
kind of a trip to be like, you know, like Jesus, fuck, what happened to me?
Well, science fiction is only fiction until those discoveries are made or that technology is brought to. Like when I was a kid watching Star Trek, the idea of like remotely communicating with people so far away by pressing a button was so insane. Like they're telecommuters, like, or the telecommunication buttons. Like, hey, we're gonna do this. I'm like, that's nuts, you know. And then when I was older, and you'd watch these science fiction shows where they're like talking to somebody through a screen, and their face is there, and they're having a call. What the fuck, God? That'll never happen. So now we're living in that scientific future. And there's been a couple movies that I thought were really, really interesting. One was Stargate.
Yep.
The idea that like these pyramids are just like left over from 1,000 years ago when they landed and they tried to have a slave race, and Stargate's a very interesting one. And I always forget what it's called. It might even be a Vin Diesel movie, which I don't think
Like
it
Chronicles
is.
of Riddick?
Maybe, but this basically the scenario was that each planet is a farm for these like intergalactic I guess titans of industry, and they're like, this planet is our farm, this planet is our farm, and we're trying to extract this from it. And they travel all around different galaxies, and they barter families versus families, kind of like Dune and Spice, the idea of that kind of thing. And I'm pretty sure it was a Vin Diesel movie. I'll have to look, because it was a great scenario where these people were only rejuvenated. Okay, so they were eternal, but part of the reason they were mining these different planets is because they were able to extract this stuff that allowed the upper echelon to continue their eternal life, right? And
Makes
I thought,
sense.
well, man, well,
That's
right?
what they would do.
And then on each planet there was the upper echelon that were kind of like the delegates that would explain to these, you know,
Dumb it down for everyone.
well, and control everybody, you know, and eventually they're like, okay, we need this much of this and this much of this. Okay, here you go.
Did they give him a goofy tall hat and a big stick? And
Yeah,
they give him a special
exactly.
book they had to read to everybody?
Right? Yeah. Well, and it's the theory of taxes.
Sure.
Right? Pay unto Caesar that which is Caesar's, right?
Yeah.
Everything goes upwards. You pay upwards, and those at the bottom just endure it, right? And to do otherwise would be an upset to the system, and you're punished for that one way or another, politically, legally, spiritually. That's the model that we've been dealing with, especially with monotheism.
Well, and if you can keep that middle level of the pyramid comfortable enough that they can keep that bottom level down there, you don't have to even really worry about uprisings, you know?
See, and that's the thing. A lot of, I guess, politically minded activists that say, you know, we need to tax the 1% are part of the 1%, the global 1%.
Yeah.
And they forget this all the time, that like,
Although I do think some of them are cool with it. Some of them are like, yeah, tax us accordingly. Because some people do pay their taxes.
Yeah.
You know, some people are like, yeah, you know
I've
what?
heard that.
I can, yeah, right. They're rare, but they're out there. But yeah, no, I think there are some reasonable millionaires in the world that are like, you know what? Yeah, I got fucking lots. Why not? And if not, I'm going to put that out there and hopefully it grows.
I saw this thing. It was explaining billionaires with rice. You know, and each one of these pieces of rice is $100,000. And Buddy brings out a sack and he's just pouring it. And this is a millionaire, and that's a big pile of rice. And then he pulls out a billionaire. Yeah. And then he pulls out like Elon Musk, and it's a huge amount of fucking rice. And every grain of rice is $100,000.
I literally don't have a sliver of a grain of rice.
No, that's the thing.
$100,000?
On a good day, I'm a thousandaire.
Yeah.
You know, like, and then bills happen.
Yeah.
I'm like, fuck, I was above that line, right? Yeah. So that's the thing.
Yep.
They don't realize how far removed they are from the guys on the bottom. But guys like you, me, or Russ here, falling asleep, motherfucker.
No, I'm not.
Guys like us are still heads and shoulders above the people that are living on less than $1 a day in developing countries.
Fuck, hey?
And we talk about, oh man,
no one's been forcibly circumcising me.
Yes.
You know? No, I shouldn't say that. I didn't have a vote on it, I guess. I was technically forcibly circumcised.
I weaseled out.
Nobody kicked the door down and made my parents do it. Anyways, yeah.
But yeah, okay. There was no clitorectomy.
Yeah, there you go. Although, maybe that's why I ended up with this thing. Yeah, it started out as a big clit. Now you got a tiny dick. and
you're technically intersex. So that's the thing when it comes to these, like, you know, developing countries, for lack of a better word. I don't like using third world, but like less than privileged companies or countries.
No, you were right the first time.
Companies, yeah, it's all oligarchy.
Nothing Freudian about that.
So these guys, I'm not willing to give up my luxury. The relative luxury I have, especially in Saskatchewan when it's minus 40. I really appreciate a structure of indoor heating, you know, and plumbing. But who knows, you know? And I see a lot of people saying we need to eliminate the top 1%. We need to share everything. I'm like, okay, you first. And when you guys all do it,
their shit's so disproportionate, right? Mm-hmm. They could take up the slack for a fucking lot of people. I can help a little bit. Those guys can help everybody a lot. Mm-hmm. I can help this billionaires, 2, 3. You know what I mean?
So that's just it.
Maybe Russ, I can help.
They're saying the top 1%. They're not saying the top 500 people in America. They're not saying, because that top 500 people in America have more money than everybody else. Yeah. Than even like the top 1,000 or the next 1,000.
And that's what's been my thinking on it. It's not even the top 1%. No. You don't need to, it's the top 0.02% or whatever the fuck the number breaks down to.
Yeah,
there is enough with vastly disproportionate that they and their families couldn't in 50 fucking lifetimes burn through all the goddamn cash.
Yeah.
Those guys need to start
That's what I'm saying.
And they didn't earn that. You know
that's
what I mean?
My point. It's not the 1%
there's no
anymore.
Sweat that put into that.
It's probably the top 10 people in the world.
Yeah.
You know, they
there we go.
Fix the
That's
problems.
much more accurate. And I bet you it's closer to that than the 1%, honestly. Yeah.
Yes. Actually, it's interesting. I was talking about with a friend of mine who's actually really smart, and he's involved with biomechanics and rehabilitating like damaged water systems and stuff. And I asked him straight up, I'm like, his company, they're called Fixed Earth. They develop microbes that can eat oil and shit it out to a bioorganic. Nice. And then they also do this with dirty water. So they think they might be able to fix Flint's water supply.
Really?
And
that's amazing.
They do some really interesting stuff. So I asked him, I'm like, straight up, okay, so what about the dirty waters on the reserves in Canada? And he's like, this is a tricky one because it's not just piping water to them or fixing their infrastructure. In each one of those reserves, you would need a water filtration plant. And you would need to have the money and the ability for the engineers and the water technicians to go there to set it up. And on top of that, you would need the technicians in each of those reserves, because they're so remote, to live there. And or locals to work at the water treatment plant.
It's every small town, though.
Okay,
my small town of 1,200 people. That's exactly how it operated.
But
they
right
had their
now,
own water treatment plant. They had somebody local trained to do it.
Those industries are stretched to the nuts, where they don't have new engineers to build these places, and they don't
start
have
a round
the
of
money.
schools. Fire up a new class at SciAst. Pay guys enough, you'll get them to go.
Yeah, well, to a degree. Yeah. I don't know, man. Would
you get people?
Would you move off to like some northern? I wouldn't. I'm just.
That's
being
where
honest.
I grew up.
Okay.
I grew up in the equivalent of that. You know what I mean? I did go back there. I did live there as an adult.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like you. Yeah.
I don't know, man. I don't know many people that, like, if they had the choice, would do it. Like, no matter how much you're getting paid, I guess it would be a lot of those ways going off to the Arctic. You know, they would be very
similar. They get paid similarly too a lot of times.
Yeah.
You want to go work in the Northwest Territories or Northern Reserve as a pharmacist, you probably get a similar wage.
Yeah.
Because you get a special incentive for all that. And it sucks, but so here's my thing on that, right? Is like, it sucks to have to do that and all that, but like there's been, I read a thing in Ontario where they were having trouble retaining doctors, these small communities, just like same problem we have in Saskatchewan. Can't keep a small town doctor. So they said, said, they went to doctors and said, what do we have to do to get you guys to stay in our community? Because if it's money-wise, I mean, we can only compete so much, and that's not really dictated by locals when it's like how our healthcare system works, right? So it's like, how do you get them to stay there? And like, well, really, I'm a doctor. I'm going to make fucking money everywhere I go. What I want is a lifestyle. I want to be able to enjoy the things that I enjoy, and generally, a lot of them are in bigger centers.
Yep.
You know, so these communities said, okay, well, what kind of? Because there are some doctors that like love to
I
live
need
in
a
a place.
Starbucks. I need a Ferrari.
Legit though,
I need
legit, dude, legit. That's what they. That's the kind of shit they said, and they said, okay, well then let's figure out how to get those things here. So we need a Starbucks. Okay, well
Yeah.
who do we know that's going to get a Starbucks going in the community?
something
You know,
equivalent, yeah.
exactly, whatever the fuck it is they want. So then you're building more in your community. You're getting jobs, all that kind of shit, right? And those people do bring enough money, and then in a community the right size, somebody who's making even $150,000 or $200,000 moves into a community of 1,000 people. Their fucking income if it starts trickling down inside that community, can have such a massive impact.
Oh, I hear that. I read an article, and it was kind of, they really believe that in the next 40 years, that middle America and small town America is going to dry up, and everybody will have to evacuate to the big metropolises.
There's very few movies in the future where everybody's living in small towns
Yeah.
with quiet main
It's
streets.
a centralization of population
Right.
versus a decentralization of
Yeah.
population. When in my ethics and my vision, I think decentralization would be wonderful, where you have
Yeah.
more small
Spread out.
communities
Yeah.
in between each other,
Yeah.
where it's only, a 5-10 minute drive to the next little, commune of people and good
But
farmers.
then we have to move away from big box centers
Yes,
and Walmarts in every
100%.
communities. And we have to, again, like I said, creating
Buy
that small
local
town
and-
infrastructure that can still support that shit and keep those people engaged.
Okay, and the other element to this is a culture that has become addicted to their pleasure. That I need my Starbucks.
Yeah.
I need the lifestyle.
Well, the
of
other
all
though,
the things.
some people they were able to draw with. No, I love hunting. I love going fishing,
Yeah,
and they're
that's-
like, okay, great, we've got the best camps in the world.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah.
Shit like so. I mean, it's sometimes it's that, but sometimes they do want to be in a like, especially if you were someone who maybe you're getting later in your career and you want to get the fuck away from the city and go and live a life. That makes sense, right?
What was it? We just started watching a series on Amazon, and it's called "I Don't Want to Give Up My Amazon and Netflix." Okay, so we started watching a series on Amazon called Yellowstone, and it's very interesting. It's got a couple different context to it. It's about a rancher, a very rich rancher in Montana. So this is very interesting, being from Saskatchewan. We're right above Montana. For those of you that don't know. The geography is very same, large prairies, lots of farmers, and they talk a lot about indigenous people with their lands being taken and conflicting against the rancher that started a small town, and then how much the reserve gets, and they have a casino and stuff like that. And it's really interesting because the one city guys come out to the I guess what the frontier, and they look out there and they get goosebumps, and they're like, because this is the frontier. This is what your spirit yearns. It's to break new ground. It's to go to new areas. It's to connect with nature. And the more you're in a city, the more that gets removed from you. And some people I know, I was just jamming with some kids, are like, we need to get out in the city, as opposed to the idea of get out in nature. We need to get out in the city. And I'm like, I really don't buy that, but maybe it's because I'm twice your age and I've been in the city my whole life, and it's getting to the point.
Yeah, you've seen most of the nooks and crannies at this point.
Yeah, and I've been
Well,
to
you know
big
what? In this
cities
city
and
though,
seen
this one's still
grimy
like
shit.
getting out in nature because there's lots of parks. Our riverfront's really nice.
Yeah, yeah.
So you can still get out in the city and
I think
enjoy
that
some nature. I don't know if
most-
that's what they meant. I don't know these kids.
I don't see. That's just it.
I don't know these kids you were yelling at in your front yard. I assume.
No, we were jamming together. Okay, so I've been to Edmonton, and they've got a really nice park and river thing through the
They got a
center
really, really
there.
cool little ski hill even there.
Yeah. And Calgary has a ton of park areas. So I think almost, at least in Canada, every city I've been to does have designated nature spaces, but it's a little different. And Saskatoon is nice because we're just at the cusp of being a city, like a real city. And but we still have 10 minutes in any direction, you're in nature to some degree, or somebody's farm,
Yep.
right?
Absolutely.
So that's kind of
We had
nice...
a moose in the school at one of the local schools, 2 weeks ago? Just wandered in and ended up in a classroom.
Oh yeah,
So-
there's rabbits
so that shit's
everywhere.
still
this
going
year.
down
I've
here.
been
Yeah,
seeing those little fuckers
people,
everywhere.
walking their animals, worrying about cougars and shit down by the river.
Yeah.
So yeah,
So
keeping it
I
raw.
don't know. See, and that's just it. And I'm lucky because my personality with my idea on traditionalism versus contemporary modern kind of culture, the deterioration of urban environments, I think is a very real thing. I saw this girl, and she was on TikTok talking about Toronto. how the art scene in Toronto and the music scene in Toronto is not supportive of anybody until they get popular somewhere else. So Toronto artists are largely ignored and berated, and like, you're not going to get a gig, you're not going to do this until somebody in New York recognizes you, or somebody in Detroit recognizes you, or Europe or South America, and then they come back and like, oh, Toronto, you're our guy from our neighborhood. But up until that point, you're a fucking nobody. And that's a weird Canadian attitude.
That's music. That's a music scene. You won't pay to go fucking see your buddy's band play, and then all of a sudden you find out they sold out a bunch of shit somewhere else. You're like, well, fuck, we should check them out. Yeah. I had buddies do that after we opened for the Misfits. Be like, oh, we should come down sometime. Like, it's the same fucking songs we were playing 2 weeks ago, right?
Yeah.
Nothing's changed for us, you dinks.
Well, I guess maybe there's some communities that are very insulated and they support local. I'd like to think that the Vancouver metro area, where like all of that, there's so many little cities that are closely joined together, that there is a community of people supporting local. But apparently it doesn't happen out in Toronto area that much. But here in Saskatoon, there is nothing but the local scene.
Yeah. And it is incestuous.
It's incestuous, and every once in a while, a courageous traveling band will stop between Alberta and Manitoba.
Right.
And,
somebody's willing to make the detour. They had a show in Edmonton they had to do, so instead of going down south and going to Regina, fuck, might as well hit Saskatoon on the way. But if you're doing Calgary to Winnipeg, forget about it.
Yeah.
Smell you later, Saskatoon.
See, and that's just it. And so we had this very incestuous small scene of people that were like very, very into the stuff they were into and developing their own hobbies, whatever they are, music, art, choppers, whatever, and they were authentic. It reminds me so much of the people I met in Japan that way. They're an island that didn't have access to culture, so they just did as best they could, and anything they found, they treasured.
We're an island that doesn't have access to culture.
Very close, very close. Yeah. And I think in places like Toronto and Vancouver, they take a lot of that for granted. This is just what it is, man. It is what it is. And I don't see it so much in Vancouver. Vancouver seems to be a little more laid back because they smoke a lot of weed. But Toronto's got that urban vibe, like that we're the New York of Canada vibe. And
a little edgy, you know what I mean? Like always cool, always hip.
And we're the commercial. We're the trendsetters. We have much music,
Sure.
As opposed, I always thought Vancouver was more stylish than Toronto. I thought, because it was sort of like the laid back, like the I guess West Coast.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, Toronto never had an identity to me. It just seemed like a bunch of everything.
Yeah. It always struck me as
it's
businesses.
Everything. Yeah.
It's center of business.
It was
Canada.
like our New York, where I'm like, what's New York? I'm like, I don't know, a bunch of shit. You know what I mean? Like, what is it? What is Toronto? Whereas like I have a vision of Vancouver, of Calgary, of Winnipeg. Mm-hmm. Toronto was just kind of like whatever.
It's also kind of interesting.
I got a little Toronto rant here for a second. Yeah, just kind of whatever.
Whatever. We're prairie. We're allowed
what
to.
What are we talking about today?
I also seem, and maybe I'm wrong, but my experience is the further west I've traveled, the more they start to incorporate indigenous culture in their expression of the public works. Like you go to Vancouver, you're going to see Haida and Indian art everywhere. Yeah. Everywhere. It's part of our culture. There's totem poles on the street. There, you go into the store. There's Haida art. But then it's unceded territory too. The tribes there never signed treaties.
So the colonialism kind of like lost steam by the time it got there.
It literally, right? They're like, we can't get out here.
We already got the rest of it. Fuck it.
They're like, fuck you, right? Yeah. But we're just going to move in if it's okay. We're going to set up a port, sure, and that's just it. And so they're having a lot of conflict over logging rights and taking wood and laying down pipes in unceded territory. Because, legitimately, you don't have treaties with us. This is not your land. This is still our land.
But I want it. But it's easier for me.
Yeah, right? Economy.
Yeah.
Economy.
Yeah.
Don't you know?
Yeah.
And
don't
they're like,
put your energy
ecology.
Yeah.
Ecology. Yeah.
Yeah.
But survival of our people and of the land, and that's more important than your pocketbook, motherfucker. So, yeah, that's, I see... I've been watching a fair amount of videos on, and it's still going on, the Wet'suwet'en people that are trying to protect their land from oil companies and logging companies and hardcore fishery. They're just like, don't come here. This is like kind of like a reserve, a nature reserve, right? But hey, economy. You can't stop progress. People want this wood. People want this oil, right?
Yeah. It's like going in somebody's yard, seeing they got a beautiful berry bush and going, what, you don't eat these? Just pulling over. You're like, no, I just leave the berries there because I like them and the birds show up. Oh, really? And you got your pockets full. Like it's the same fucking thing.
The birds really need those to survive into the winter. No, that's cool. I can make some money off a basket of berries.
Yeah. Give me your berry basket. Yeah. But Maybe we should, unless you get some other stuff you want to talk about.
No, I only had
I'm
surfing
pretty
Kali
much-
Yuga and fucking Sarah Silverman.
I had 2. It turns out I wasn't receptive. We fucking and I had 2 pages of alien stuff, and we talked about them good.
Yeah.
Because I got a few shrimp orders coming in by the looks of it.
All right.
So I'm excited about it. It's gonna be
We'll
busy
try
next
and get
2
on
weeks here
this.
before Xmas, and
You got 2 weeks at shrimp before we do this again.
yeah, you know what, man, I'm slanging it.
Do you want to do one before Christmas? See if we could figure something out.
Well, let's see how things work out timeline wise. I think I'm gonna have a little bit of time off. If my next 2 weeks work out the way I was discussing with Russell on the drive over here.
Okay, yeah,
Shouldn't
keep me
be a
posted.
reason. If not, fucking, I'll do something else. You know, it'd be kind of fun is to like figure out how to set up a stream thing one time, or even just video us, I guess, playing some video games. I just want to play some video games
Oh,
with you.
shit, man.
We've never played video games. I know you enjoy them. I enjoy them.
Yeah,
Make some
yeah.
time. We can fucking do it. It'd be kind of fun if we're gonna be here for 2 hours anyways. We'd fucking.
Fortnite set up a new map,
some
which I'm
shit
trying to figure out. They got some good new guns.
Well, we can mix it up then, because I've never played that. You can try it out and then get frustrated.
Yeah, it's fucked up.
I'll bring a UFC over and slap you viciously.
Oh God, yeah. I just do front kicks.
Oh, you know what
front
I'll do
kicks.
is I'll make a character that looks exactly like you, and then just like crank your shit all
keep
down.
working on it.
Yeah,
Make
man.
him the weakest,
Dude,
gassiest.
I'm just a nerd with that kind of stuff. I don't know how many hundreds of hours I've put into different types of fighting and wrestling games, making people I know. But it's been kind of cool actually, because I'll play one and I'll have my brother Matthew in there, and I'll be like, oh, fuck me and Matthew, we're gonna go fuck these guys up.
That's funny.
Yeah.
My neck is now fucked up from rolling again. Ooh.
Or were you doing some Hugh hits you?
Yeah.
With
Trying.
Imperium?
No, not with Imperium. My other buddy runs Studio 6 in Saskatoon. It's a Sikaran. Well, actually,
okay.
Tadi Kamau, I think is what it's called. And then they also do freestyle no-gi grappling.
Cool.
So we did some grappling, and once again, my spine just isn't made for it. So I might just go back into the stand-up stuff, right? Oh,
Yeah.
man, like that's just it. You get a crank on, and I'm like, no. And even though I've been working out my neck, can't handle it. It's just like snap, crackle, pop. And I'm like, boy, I can't look left for a week. It's like, are you training tonight? I'm like, maybe when I can look around. So,
I'll see if I can shoulder check my way over there.
but he also suggested that possibly we could just do drills. Learn the technique, do drills, and not rolling.
Yeah.
Because rolling is when the uncontrolled aspect comes in, and that's when injuries happen. When guys try to get that kind of stuff.
Like a drill I always enjoyed with jiu-jitsu was like the chess match mentality game where you do a move, I do a move. You do a move, I do a move. I slide to here, you adjust to this.
Yeah,
you adjust
not
to this,
fighting
I go to
for
that.
stuff.
You put an arm in here, I put 2 hands on this. You know what I mean? And if it's correct, okay, cool. And you move, you get to the position, you see how it works, you move to a different one. That was always a fun flow thing to do.
Well, we'll talk about it next week.
Let's
Or
talk
the
about
next
it next time we
Yes,
talk
we'll
about it.
see how the martial arts stuff goes, and we'll pick up from there.
That sounds good, dude.
Okay, have
All
a
right,
good one.
Bye.
Peace.